shame says you are bad. Like you are innately bad. So then you walk around with that limiting belief, that limiting worth and value. Where guilt, right, lets you know what you did was wrong. But you are not innately bad. Meaning there's hope, there's restoration.
Welcome to the Revive Podcast. I'm your host, Freddy Romero, and I am so excited that you're joining us for this conversation today. Today, we're going to dive deep into a topic that often comes with a lot of stigma, and we try to avoid, not just in the church, but just in society in general. Even though there seems to be more acceptance towards it, statistics show us that people try to deal with things on their own, and we all know that we suffer in isolation, but we heal in community, and having conversations is a part of being in community. But before we get into the conversation with our awesome guest today, if you've yet to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube, do so right now. All right. We have so many amazing guests coming up. We have so many episodes planned for you in this new season, and we don't want you to miss any of them. So also hit that bell button so that you get notified whenever we drop a new episode. And if you're listening to this on any other podcast platform, please leave us a rating and a review, because that helps us so much so that it could reach other people just like you. Today, I want to talk about healing hearts. I want to talk about something that we need to talk about here at Revive, and then also introduce you to some of the things that we're launching here at Revive. And so our guest today is Cirene Marquez, and you've seen her lead worship. You've seen her do so many things here at our church. But in this new season, we're going to talk about something that she's stepping into here in our Revive community. She is a wife, a mother, and a mental health advocate. And through her own journey of healing and growing from different life experiences, Cirene knew she wanted to help others find mental, emotional, and spiritual healing as well. After pursuing a master's degree in Pastoral Counseling, Cirene has served in this role for almost 2 years as one of the counselors at Breath of Life Foundation. More recently, Cirene became a board-certified mental health coach, which is really exciting. And she is excited to continue helping others through coaching and helping the local church by providing pastoral counseling resources. Cirene, thank you so much for giving us some of your time and just being here with us on the Revive Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege.
Cirene, when we talk about, mental health, what are we really talking about? Because I feel that maybe we're using that term as a really broad brushstroke to cover so many things. What are we talking about exactly when we use the term mental health? And what are we not talking about when we use the word mental health?
When we think of the word mental health, we're talking about our thoughts. And interestingly, our thoughts are connected with our emotions. So when we talk about mental health, we're talking about the relationship between our thoughts and our emotions, and the cognitive process is what we think, right, impacts what we feel, and what we feel impacts what we do.
Yeah. So
mental health is really looking into our thinking process, right? How we interact with the world, with relationships, with our environments, right? Experiences. That's how we process. And so that is when we talk about mental health, is looking at, well, how is your thinking? How is your process of experiencing relationships and circumstances and situations?
Yeah.
So that is when we look at mental health.
One of the cool things about talking to you, even in the short times that we've been talking about, what we're going to be launching here at Revive, what you're launching personally, is that you educate with such a grace, and are such an advocate for us using the right language, and because it helps us approach people in a dignified but intentional way. And so I love that you do that a lot. So please feel free on this episode to do that.
Thank you.
If I'm ever using a term that I'm not supposed to,
Oh, no, thank you. Actually, I am a learner myself. And so I like to understand things and simplify them And in that, I enjoy teaching as well, because I love learning and I love sharing that information with others, because I know how much it's impacted me. And so absolutely, if there's ways and I can, help communicate that best. I'm asking God for wisdom for the right terminology and words, to make it relatable. And that's the whole point, right? Is to make it relatable, that it is accessible to everybody. It's not something that's only reserved for, PhD researchers and things like that. And so,
this does seem like a lofty, even intimidating subject matter. I will confess, even for myself, like it just, for some reason, in your comfort zone, you feel like you can excel. So if I had maybe a theologian or a pastor or a professional clergy across the table from me right now, I'd feel like, okay, like I'm in my zone. I can be at this table. But one of the things that you and I have had conversations about, and I love your heart behind these things, is that what you do is ministry. Absolutely. It is one of the purest forms of ministry. Could you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that usually when we talk about the work of the church and the ministry of the church, we only think about the evangelist and the preacher and the people on stage, and we're not thinking about the people that are helping to shepherd and counsel those that are hurting, those that need this type of shepherding.
What comes to mind is one of the main biblical elements or principles that is the heart of mental health advocacy as ministry is that of compassion. Ahí está. It's compassion. It's, yes, learning and being trained and equipped in how to identify that in others and helping them navigate those very difficult circumstances or crossroads, right? Trying to figure out, who am I? What season in life am I in? Or having to process deep hurts and wounds and grief and all those different life experiences, human experiences and emotions. And what I learned in my own journey is that those of us who have been called to serve in this capacity is that God uses our own life story first. To heal, to understand, to learn how to identify. In that, you learn compassion and grace for anyone that's going to sit across from you, because you've been there or you have that empathy. And I love Dr. Brené Brown. That's her. She's a researcher, and her whole work is on vulnerability and understanding, shame and empathy and how we can walk alongside people. And so the heart of the ministry is compassion. And that's what Jesus reflected. Is compassion for the outcast, compassion for, those who, were going through real hardships and circumstances, and challenging those that needed a little check.
Come on.
Like, hey, you're taking this like it's all on you. Let me give you a little check because I love you, because there's compassion. And God wants us to, fulfill that kingdom work on earth.
So for ministry, like, you think about church, especially in our Western culture and our Americanized version of the expression of faith, compassion is not profitable. It takes too long. It's too messy. Like it's almost uncontrollable, because we're dealing with thoughts and emotions, and there's ebbs and flows to that. So, you know what? We're gonna as a church, we're gonna do all these other, we're gonna have all these other expressions of motivated by compassion. But when it comes with helping people, going through hurt, mental health, circumstances, issues, emotional trauma, etc., like, we're gonna leave that for secularism. We're gonna leave that for the professionals, as if there aren't professional believers in the kingdom. And we want to just, like, kind of segment those two things because it's just too messy. Why do you feel called to, as a believer, why do you feel called to stand in the gap for those people who may not find a place in the church where they could be shepherded, where they could be discipled, where they could be healed, where they could have these safe spaces to have these conversations on the things that they're going through?
Well, I'd like to address the first part.
Okay.
It's hard for us to attend to that part because a lot of times we're dealing with stuff ourselves. So we're going to leave that to someone else.
Yeah.
Because we got our own
mess,
our own stuff.
Yes, our own stuff. Yes.
And if I have to help you reflect on it, it's probably going to cause me or challenge me or convict me
sure.
to have to do that too. And I might not be ready or have energy or really want to go there. So that might be one reason. It's not the only one.
Yeah.
But that can be one reason.
That's a real one though, yeah.
And then the second part was, can you just rephrase the second part?
Yeah, I would. Why have we said, as
leaving
a church,
it for the outside world?
Let's leave that issue to be handled by someone else, and the church will just focus on these other compassion projects.
Yeah.
Why do you think we are intimidated by that?
I think what comes to mind, and which is part of my story as well, is representation. If we don't have the knowledge that we do have people from our own church in those places, we don't even know that that's accessible, that that's a resource.
Right.
We just hear about therapy outside. And if we take it a little bit further to a cultural perspective as Latinos, counseling and therapy, no way, right? You grab the bull by the horns and you figure it out, right? That's kind of the coping mechanism that we've developed. We don't see it as, hey, it's okay to, like they say, not be okay and to go ask for help.
Yeah.
So I would say it's representation could be one reason. And again, it's the uncertainty, right? The fear of the unknown. It probably seems something, too difficult, too challenging. And so we're going to leave it outside. We're going to leave it for, like you said, the secular world. And then another thing is the reality that there has been this tension between science and religion.
I want to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So before we get into that, because I do want to talk about, in the kingdom and in our faith, can belief in Christ coexist with, therapy, counseling, etc.? But before we get into that, I want to just know your what aspect of your personal story led you to become a pastoral counselor? Because I think this is this is such a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I know you have a lot of fun. I know you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
But I want to know what led you to, because I don't think for you, I know you. I know other counselors. I know other therapists. I know other people who've gone through this, and I see their decision to do this as a career decision and not necessarily as a calling. When I talk to you and other people in your circles, I see wow, they operate in this as if there's a mandate over their life. So maybe I'm over spiritualizing it, because again,
no, you're not.
Tell me about
that's
it.
the truth for me. The best way I can describe it is that I have been operating in this role since I was young. I didn't need a title. I just needed the skill set, because I did get to a point where I realized I always find myself in situations where there's something, again, the grace, right, that God has on someone who has a calling, where I can ask or sit with someone, and whether I've known you for a while or even someone who can be new, right, as a new friend, even a stranger, where there's this safety where I can say, how are you doing? And it's
right.
The heart opens up. I always found myself in those situations since I was a youth leader.
Was there a specific experience or someone's feedback about, you know, the conversations they would have with you, that kind of cemented it, that kind of said, you know what, this is what I want to do.
Yes. Like literally my friends would come over to hang out and talk, right? Just hang out. And literally, I remember this one time, one of my girlfriends, she's like, oh, can I just like lay on the couch? And I'm like, sure. And when I was just sitting there, we were talking, hang out. And then afterwards, she's like, this felt like a therapy session.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I laughed because I'm like, I hear that a lot. So, you know, one of the things, you know, shifting a little bit to like, you know, spiritual direction and how do you know God's calling? You know, one of the things I've learned to identify is like, what are people seeing in you?
Absolutely.
You know, what are some skills that are being affirmed? And so that was something that has been affirmed in me for years. And I remember there was one particular conversation that I had that was really like the turning point for me, where I knew like I have to get trained, or I desire to get trained, because I'm now listening to things that are more delicate, right? More of like, you know, not necessarily domestic violence, not sexual abuse, but like physical abuse. And I was like, I don't know what to do next. I know what to do spiritually. I know how to be there and encourage and check in and pray. I know how to do that. But then what do you do practically? And that element I was not knowledgeable in. Yeah. And that was one of the scenarios that really like moved me to want to pursue like how do I grow in this? Yeah. And again, because I didn't even know what it was, I had no idea pastoral counseling was a thing.
Yeah.
I was just thinking ministry, how can I be better equipped to serve? How can I be better equipped to serve? And I just thought ministry, like this is what I'm gonna do.
What a lesson there though. Like the lesson, you know, and I think the inspiration for anyone listening and watching this is there's here at Growth Track, here at Revive, you know, we talk about the empirical evidence, which is people affirming things. You know, Pastor Josh always says, you know, oftentimes we think we love to sing, so we belong on the worship team. But if no one's ever told us, hey, you have a good voice, you know, maybe right. You're just a worshiper and maybe not a singer, you know? And so, and he talks about, like, he makes several examples, but that's his lane, right? So he talks about that there's empirical evidence where like you have a calling from God, you have a passion to do it, but there are also people around you tell you, hey, you're gifted at this is healing to me, this is it's ministering to me.
And there's that draw to it. Not only is the need, but then there is that interest, that desire, that enjoyment of learning the material, right? Because like you say, okay, not everyone's going to want to learn about neuroscience. Like that's like my new topic that I'm like, when I tell my husband, like, let's talk neuroscience. He's like, you're such a nerd. But I love that he's into it too, right? He's intrigued by it as well. And so there's a desire to further learn.
That's beautiful. So it doesn't feel like a chore to you.
Not at all. On the contrary, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn. If anything, the contrary happens where I still feel inadequate.
Wow.
I still, and that has more to do with some of my own insecurities, right? And some of like, like my first gen, I'm a first gen, meaning, you know, my parents, well, my mom came from Mexico when she was 15. My dad was born in Puerto Rico, but came over when he was 8. So I'm the first to go to college, to go to grad school. And so even that alone is, you know, the insecurity of that. So all of that has fueled some of the like, the feeling sometimes of inadequacy or of, what's the word that a lot of my first gen colleagues and friends use? Imposter syndrome. Right? Because you've never seen it before. You're the first one to do it. So it does get difficult. But there's this longing and desire that is greater than the fear and the insecurity. And you're like, I know God calls me to this. Yeah. And so I will face that. And then you look at fear and you're like, oh, you're not that big. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that'll preach. Why so what is pastoral counseling and what led you to choose that as your field of study and profession.
Sure.
Yeah.
So pastoral counseling. So there's different pathways.
If you can give us like a bite-sized
sure.
version.
What I understand.
Sure.
Because I'm also learning.
Okay, cool.
We'll learn together.
We're with it. That's what we do here.
So what I'm understanding of in the mental health field, right, you have your therapists and their approach is clinical, where they are looking to diagnose, right? And they do have the training to kind of look more into like the brain structure and all those things. There's training in pastoral counseling as well, but doesn't necessarily, we're not licensed to diagnose.
Got it.
In a clinical approach.
Okay.
So that's therapy. Pastoral counseling, well, actually, let me say biblical counseling. So biblical counseling is also a pathway, and that's something that can be done at a church, right? Where it's counseling just with the Bible, just from a spiritual perspective. So there's biblical counseling. Christian counseling would be, kind of coinciding with pastoral counseling, and it's the integration of psychology and theology, is marrying the understanding of the human body, development, right? All those, more psychological approach.
Yeah.
With an understanding that our human experience is also spiritual.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. So it's the integration of both.
Yeah.
So that's how kind of I would explain pastoral counseling is different. Definitely trained though, and with degrees in mental health.
Yeah.
For example, with me, pastoral counseling, it's so interesting because when I knew I wanted to pursue and get equipped, I just knew I wanted to get equipped. I had no idea how.
Yeah.
So the first thing was, okay, I will apply to seminary because I also felt I didn't really know the Bible. I only knew a few verses, and that's what I was using to kind of help people along. And I was like, I really want to know God's word so I can better serve them. Okay, so I got accepted to Azusa Pacific University, their seminary program in 2015. And that was like our first year of marriage or so. And we also wanted to start a family. So it was a perfect transition for me out of my career, which was in the school system as a principal secretary. That was my career prior.
Yeah.
And I fully transitioned into becoming a stay-at-home mom. And my journey in seminary was a 5-year journey. And so I finished that master's within the 5 years, gave birth twice. That's why it took a little bit longer. But this is the thing, and I love how God works because his timing truly is perfect. I kid you not. The last class of the semester, that 5th year, was a class titled Pastoral Counseling. And that whole program was like a therapy session for me, which is the purpose of the program,
right?
Is to have you go through all that inner reflection and healing as you go out to do that and walk alongside others.
Yeah.
So when I took that class, it was like, that's what it's called.
Yeah. You knew it.
That's what it's called. I didn't have language. I didn't have representation. So I didn't know.
Yeah.
But that was the next step. God gives you the next step, right? Your word is a lamp to my feet, a light into my path. He gives you the next step. And that was my next step. And somewhere along that time frame, I know that it was the middle of the pandemic. Somewhere along that time frame is when our pastors, Noemi, she introduced me to Dr. Tanya.
Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Tanya Paniagua. Yeah.
Dr. Tanya Paniagua, the founder of Breath of Life Foundation, a Christian counseling organization. And she took me under her wing because Pastor Noemi knew that I was like interested in this. And then we're also, my husband and I were going through counseling, and it was like the perfect timing. And so she took me under her wing because she had also stepped into pastoral counseling and was working on Breath of Life and her doctorate program.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So it was like this beautiful, like just God sent. And so to this day, I've been with under Dr. Tanya for 4 years. It's been that long since.
Yeah.
So after that last class of pastoral counseling, and I knew this is what it was, that's when I went specifically into a second master's at Liberty University in pastoral counseling because I needed the psychology piece.
Gotcha. So you're now equipped, and you're prepared, and you've prepared yourself to, one of the things that I really love about your story, is that all of this stems still from a motivation to better serve. I had a friend tell me, he's successful at several businesses, but he always told me like, hey, try not to find, he's like, don't make the mistake of finding people to sell to, find people to serve. Like, because if you try to find people to sell to, like, you will always, like, you will never be fulfilled in that. When you find people to serve, and the fact that your motivation this whole time has been to serve, these have led the doors open. I honestly feel like for a lot of people, our generation, like wanting to find my purpose. What's my purpose? What's my purpose? I think one good, clear way to find your purpose is, who do you enjoy serving?
Yeah.
Find joy out of serving a demographic, a segment of people, an industry, a field, and out of that, you'll start to discover a purpose. But sometimes it's like, we're just like sitting down and we just want, this. And I love that you searched the Word of God and you went to school seminary because you wanted to be better equipped. Then after that, you're like, hey, I need some mentoring, and God provided a mentor. And then now you went back to get your master's in pastoral counseling because now you wanted to fuse the things that you had learned to better serve.
Yeah.
I love it. Here's one of the things that you and I, we've talked about before, like all this, like these stigmas and misconceptions about counseling within the church. I know we could talk about our culture, our gente, nuestra gente. I know we could talk about our culture, but even in the church, there's like a lot of stigmas and misconceptions around counseling. Why do you think they exist and they're so prevalent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the main ones that jumps out to me is this idea that there's like a lack of faith if you're not just fully, like, yes, we're dependent on God and the Holy Spirit and the Word. But like, if you have a cavity, you're not just going to pray it away. You're going to go see the dentist, right? If you feel ill, right, or you have some discomfort or pain, yes, we absolutely, like, we have our source, our foundation, our principles, what we live off of, right? Our source is God, the Holy Spirit, His Word, 1000%. We're never neglecting that. We're not saying that it's this or that. And I think that's been the tension. It's either this or that. How about it's both and?
Yeah.
Right? So is this idea that where the shame part comes in is like, do you have lack of faith?
Yeah.
I mean, we just got to look at Job.
Yeah.
There was nothing wrong with Job's faith.
Yeah.
Simply God in His perfect will allowed that to happen. But in our humanity, right? Job was like, what did I do? Like his friends, we read the story, everyone had an opinion, lack of faith, hidden sin. That's where the shame piece comes in. Right? So it's being able to look at it as a resource.
Yeah. So what things can the church, capital C church, do to remove some of these stigmas and misconceptions that people have?
Yeah. So I recently joined a cohort with our pastor for the emotionally healthy leader. And so we meet Thursday mornings bright and early. And one of the things that was said most recently in regards to that, in regards to like, how then does the church help, right? In regards to like the inner reflection and dealing with the inner man and counseling or therapy. And the word that stood out was modeling it. Right? It starts at the top. You got to model it. And our pastors have been so transparent and great at modeling. Like, they have therapists. We all know it.
Yes.
They have coaches.
Yes.
They have a lot of friends in the mental health field, and they bring them and they educate our church, and they're making it normal. They're normalizing. They're normalizing counseling and therapy, and the resource that we have with people who have been called or trained in these areas for our own health, for our own healing. That can be used. God can use a therapist, a counselor for healing.
Absolutely, yes.
Just like he uses a pastor, a teacher, a friend.
Yes. I do believe, here our vision is to create a movement of people living out their redemptive purpose in their circles of influence. And I do think that one of the things that definitely does obstruct our path on living out our redemptive purpose is that we don't deal with our pain. We haven't healed. And so lack of healing can keep you stuck, no matter how much theology you know, no matter how many prayer gatherings you go to. There is there has to be some proactivity when it comes to dealing with your stuff. And Cirene, what are some of the things that you see in the church that are not on the surface? Because all of us are really, really good about hiding our mess. We're really good about hiding our issues. We're really good about hiding some of these really painful emotions. What are some of the things that maybe you're witnessing and experiencing as people come to your offices and you guys talk? What are some of the things that you see in the church that kind of just like break your heart?
Well, I'll tell you one of the first things that really broke my heart. And it's tender, so I might get emotional.
Okay.
It was the lack of restoration for pastors and leaders who have gone through crisis and their families, because I've lost relationships as a member because there was no restoration process. And so that breaks my heart. It broke my heart then, because it didn't happen just once. It happens 3 families that I know.
This is close to home. Yeah.
And so that was the main thing that really made me aware of something's not right. This is the church. This is where people come to be restored, right? If a member comes and they're in crisis, we're going to walk with them.
Yeah.
I've been a member. I've had people walk with me, and I understand leadership in crisis. There's a different responsibility and consequences and things like that. But unfortunately, it has been my experience where I saw the how do you say it when they exclude someone?
Yeah, they ostracize you. They
And
they
so,
cast you out. Yeah,
they cast you out. You're blacklisted, and I've just seen the brokenness of that, and I've lost spiritual fathers.
So as you're seeing, what is the perpetual harm that this, or what is the domino effect of the fact that if there is no process for our leaders to be restored and healed?
Why would I come? They're going to take me out of the church. They're going to kick me out of the church. People are going to look at me different.
So we just become so good at being covert Christians, right? Just that, And
obviously it doesn't apply to everybody.
Sure.
But it's been my experience that was what broke my heart when I first realized there's something not okay about how we dealt with this.
Yeah.
As a member.
Yeah.
I observed it as a member. And so to see it happen more than once.
Yeah.
That would be one of the main things that stands out to me.
With people who are going through things or dealing with things, because I know that, you're helping me understand these differences and things.
Yeah.
And I do feel like this, shame, shame, I'm carrying something that nobody knows
Yeah.
What would you tell the person listening to this that has yet to experience pastoral counseling?
Yeah.
What would your encouragement to them be?
That's my favorite place to be with people, is reminding them that shame, again, this is the work of Dr. Brené Brown, is shame says you are bad. Like you are innately bad. So then you walk around with that limiting belief, that limiting worth and value. Where guilt, right, lets you know what you did was wrong, but you are not innately bad. Meaning there's hope, there's restoration, there's healing.
Yeah.
There's opportunity for it to look different for you.
Yeah.
Where when you carry shame, it's really hard to allow for any healing or for even like stopping the cycle of self-sabotage.
What is that? Because we hear that a lot. Yeah.
Self-sabotage is like when you already are predicting like a bad outcome or result. So then you act.
You accelerate it. You make it happen. Yeah.
You're like, well, this ain't going to go anywhere. So I might as well just do it like whatever. And because you did it like whatever, you didn't get chosen for a particular thing. And you're like, well, I wasn't going to get chosen anyways. So it's like the self-sabotage.
Yeah.
But and shame really keeps you in this place of limiting yourself, of limiting healing, of limiting just that release. And one of the other things I love in regards to this topic is shame brings condemnation.
Yeah.
Right? Condemnation is like, oh, you are definitely not worthy. You do not deserve a second chance.
Yeah.
Right? And the Bible teaches the enemy comes to condemn us.
Yeah.
But it says you are now, there's now no longer condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So shame brings on condemnation, which brings separation, isolation. Guilt or conviction lets you know what you did was wrong. So now there has to be reflection as to why. Why did you make that choice? You got to look inward. And that guilt and conviction draws you closer to God.
Yeah.
So that's how I like to teach those that I walk alongside is, are you drawing closer to God? Or are you drawing away from God when you have those thoughts or that narrative about a mistake you did or a struggle you have? Right? Because God is going to draw you closer. I was just talking to my husband about discipline and parenting.
Yeah.
How I just learned something new. Like sometimes when my daughter does something and I say, okay, you have to go to your room. You know, you made this whole mess. You poured the slime all over the floor, all over your clothes, all over your hair when I told you just to play here. We're going to clean it up and you have to go to your room. And then this parenting coach said, when he disciplines, he keeps the child close. Because when God disciplines us, he doesn't send us away. He wants us closer. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I told my husband, I am not going to send them to their room again.
Yeah.
And I learned something new today because of that. So again, it's the compassion part.
Yeah.
It's the compassion part.
Yeah. It's almost being like other focused.
Yeah.
You know, and not rigid in the legality of the decision, therefore consequence, but rather the person looking at that and seeing, okay, this is an opportunity for restoration. Yeah. As opposed to, you know, shame, condemnation.
Yeah, like you're not deserving of anything good because of what you did. So you're going to carry that.
But oftentimes, so like, you know, we experience someone sin. Big sin.
Absolutely.
Like a big sin. It affected multiple people or someone that we love. And so, you know what? You were leading something or you were part of this, you know what, you're going to go to the corner, whatever that proverbial corner is in our churches, you know, you go to your room.
Sure.
And it's the antithesis of what we're trying to build, especially here at Revive, where we say you suffer in isolation, but you heal in community. So, Cirene, can you speak on to maybe the approach that we should be taking, you know, just thinking about what you just said, what should be the approach that the church takes to those people who have sinned? What should our approach be? Because oftentimes we end up sending people to their proverbial rooms.
Right. And I think it's really based on the individual. It's a case by case.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, we choose our actions, but we can't choose our consequence. So it's very individual, like case by case. But we have to have that compassion piece. And I think it really depends on what the scenario is. Yeah.
Okay. But would you say then there should be still some level of connection?
Yes,
that person should be connected to someone. So
absolutely.
So here, one of our exciting things is that you're opening up an office here at our Long Beach campus where you will be doing a few things. Would you tell us about that? Because I think that our church needs to hear this, and what we would love, I know that other churches have started to do this, but I think there's so many more churches that should do this. So can you please let us know, what are you doing here, with your office and then with your ministry?
Sure. So one of the things I learned in the mental health coaching program that I did, and it's also something I heard in grad school, that research shows people are more likely to go to a lay leader first when they're in moments of crisis versus signing up and calling, finding, scheduling, and having the budget for, either therapy or counseling. Yes, a lot of people go that way as well. But that research shows people come to the church or the lay leaders or someone in the church first.
Yeah.
And therefore, the church becomes that front line, those first responders.
Yeah.
Because of that, it's important that the church would have this resource, right? Not only the, the spiritual direction and guidance that is very necessary, right, and foundational, but also the practical side. And so with the pastoral counseling ministry and resource we want to provide here is, first of all, letting people know that there is a safe place to come and talk. There's a safe place to take off whatever hat you wear, whatever mask you wear. It's a judgment-free zone because there's a compassion piece, right? But obviously, as well, in pastoral counseling, I'm a mandated reporter, right? So I'm also legally bound to report anything that is child abuse, elder abuse, suspicion of harm to self or others.
Yeah.
So that is my responsibility, but this is something that I share up front.
Yeah.
And again, it's for the well-being of myself and others, everyone involved.
You're
right. The motto in the mental health field, the ethic is do no harm. And if do no harm means submitting a report, right, then that's part of the ethical rule.
Yeah. I think it's so relieving. I'm sure that there are a lot of, here we operate with a model of life groups. And that's how we do community here at Revive. I could imagine that if there were going to be a place in churches where people talk about things, very personal things, it would be in small communities.
Absolutely.
In small circles. Now, the pressure for a lot of believers or people that are in these life groups, in these small communities is, oh my gosh, Cirene is going through something. We have to rescue her from her situation or from the bad emotions that she's going through or from the grief that she's suffering. And we are not trained or equipped or called to do those things. So where does the responsibility of the lay person at the church, and let's go specific to Revive, where would their responsibility start and then end? And when does the pastoral counselor take over? Where does that person's responsibility begin?
I would say that's like a process, a procedure that needs to be put in place. as to, lay leaders or volunteers, right? Life leaders, where there's a training that equips them to identify certain things and when to refer. The biggest thing is referring, because whether it's a volunteer in a life group or whether it's myself in the counseling office, I need to know my limit.
Right.
My limit of help. Right. My responsibility is not to save or fix anybody.
Right.
But I'm a resource. And so having that knowledge to understand at what point do I refer, because this is my limit. Mm-hmm. This is beyond my scope of understanding, of skill.
Yeah.
I know the city of Long Beach, on their website, they have an extensive referral list of all the different organizations here for the homeless, for battered women's shelter, for food banks. Like, there's resources. And then within our Christian community as well, there's resources, or there's, counselors or therapists. There's different organizations. And so I would say an important thing to do is to really understand what's going to be the role of each one. And as these different volunteers or lay leaders are giving this responsibility, they understand, like, hey, if you encounter something, you need to inform the next person in charge.
Oh, that's good. That's
right?
good. Yeah.
So, like, if there's a lay leader in charge of all the life group leaders, right? So there's a training for them, and they'll know that if they encounter something that they're kind of like, oof, this is a little uncomfortable for me,
Sure.
They relay to that person, and then that can be someone that either the pastoral counselor meets to discuss, hey, are you guys going through anything that, you might need some assistance with, or you want to know if there's a referral for something, if there's domestic violence and someone is like, I want to get out, I don't know how, like, what's the safety plan? How do you do that? Where do you send them? If it's an adult, they have to make that decision on their own. If it's a minor, there has to be some reporting, especially if they're in imminent danger. So there's those types of things that can be trained, educated in according to the protocol of leadership.
Yeah. That's so good to know. I think what a relief. I mean, it should be to those that are leading, because the focus and the goal for them can be fostering community and spiritual formation through discipleship in small community. But this whole healing aspect and journeying with people
who
are going through things, we could say, hey, we can refer this situation or this moment to someone who is equipped and resourced.
Yep.
And for us, the blessing is that it's you.
Yes.
For us, that it's
so
you.
That's what we're hoping to be able to serve the local church with.
And what would that look like? Like, I know that you've just now launched also your coaching segment of what you do, and so what would be the difference for those two things?
Sure.
Because I know that there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast, particularly because they're looking for ways to live out their redemptive purpose in their circles of influence, but sometimes you just don't know how to go about it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if life coaching can address some of that or can help with some of that, but could you just also let people know that is available to them?
Yeah. So coaching, the difference between coaching and pastoral counseling. So pastoral counseling tends to be past oriented or past focused on healing, right? Where coaching is future focused. They're not necessarily wanting to heal or needing to heal from something. Maybe it's just stuck and needing someone to help navigate why, and then help launch towards their goals, their vision, whatever that can be. So that's the difference. Pastoral counseling tends to be past focus. Coaching is future focused.
It's so exciting.
Yeah. And the reason why I branched into that again is I continue to learn in pastoral counseling.
Yeah.
I was just exposed to coaching and that approach as well, not only navigating past hurts with someone, but also journeying with someone and encouraging them and coaching them for the future. And so I also wanted to be in that space. So that's how that got started.
That's so beautiful. I'm such a huge advocate for investing in yourself, I think that where our time and our money goes shows what is important to us. And sometimes we don't intentionally do that, but if we were to evaluate, we could just look at someone's, bank statements and then someone's calendar and say, okay, this is what's important to
Absolutely.
you. My wife, collectively, individually, we've invested in counseling, therapy together separately over years, and it's something we have encouraged all of our friends who are dealing with things, or just feel stuck, whether it's in their marriage, their relationship, whatever. Like, you don't have to wait for an emergency to happen.
Exactly.
Sometimes I've gone to sessions with my counselor and I go and I'm like, man, I have nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
You just feel like you're in a funk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have nothing to talk about. 50 minutes later, you're like, what the heck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, they just opened you up with a scalpel and were able to identify the root of emotions and even this like lackadaisical or just going through just zoning out. And so for the person that, has not practiced, because I think it's a discipline, and it's a form of self-love and self-care to say, hey, I'm going to invest in myself the time, because oftentimes we make the excuse like, hey, I don't have the time,
right,
or I don't have the money,
right,
to invest in myself. Like, what would be the encouragement? Because I'm sure you have found, as a counselor, I'm assuming, because I've had those moments where I didn't want to go. And, I'm sure you've had experiences where people maybe are coming in by themselves or with their partner, and they're kicking and screaming coming in, and then they're done with that first session or a few sessions and go like, oh my gosh, this was the best thing ever. And then they can't stop coming. They can't wait till the next one. So what would your encouragement be for those people?
Yeah. So, I would say, like, when you want something, you want to grow in an area, like, you have to put value in it. You have to find value in it. If you don't find value in it, you're not going to save.
Yeah.
You're not going to budget for it. You're not going to make time for it.
Come on.
So you need to find value in it, right? We go to the doctor because we have value. We find value in our health, right? We go and we get educated, whether that's through podcasts or YouTube, because there's value in knowledge, right? So if you value your mental health, right, your emotions, you find yourself stuck in, cycles that are unhealthy in relationships, or you're still dealing with hurt from the past, or you want something in the future, you're dreaming of it, but it just seems so unattainable for you. Like, this is your thoughts.
Yeah.
This is your mind.
Yeah.
So if that's a value for you, then you will create what is necessary for that to, come about.
Yeah. I'm going to continue to advocate, and we are so excited to have you on board here. You and your wonderful husband, who's a dear friend of mine, just do so much for our community, and just are so full of life. But to see you now, kind of like, I don't want to say grow, but just like step into this.
Yeah, this is a new season for me. And I'm just like, Lord, my knees are shaking.
As pastors, we are thrilled that you are here and ready to rock. And so
absolutely.
We are praying, because the goal, like, we just had, a podcast for those of you guys that have just in this season. You've heard from Pastor Noemi, you've heard from Robert and Beth, you've heard from David Leonard, New Hope Grief, and now you're hearing from Cirene. Like, if it's not clear, we are in a healing season right now, and all those things, because Pastor Noemi talked about EHS, Pastor Beth, Beth and Robert, they talked about marriage and having conversations about that. You're talking about this. David Leonard talked about grief. Like, if it's not evident that we're talking about healing, because I think that this is the heart of God for his people. And so I highly encourage you to inquire. Cirene and her team, by faith. Cirene and her team will answer any questions that you may have. And I know that you have a lot of the information. So what is your website? We will have a link.
Yes.
We will have links in this podcast description. We'll also have a segment on our lifeatrevive.com website that will have an intake form. But Cirene, if someone was just like want to jump the gun and just go to you, or they're not part of our Revive church community, but they're listening to this and they're like, hey, I want to talk to her. I want to, see what she's all about. What's the website? Where can they reach out to you?
Sure. So just coachcirene.com is where they can just go visit my website, learn a little bit more about me, my story, what I do, what I offer. And there's a discovery call button there. Just click it, connect, schedule it, and we'll go ahead and chat and see what's the best next steps for that person.
Fantastic. And do that quick, guys, because it's going to get booked up real fast. That's Coach Cirene with a CIRENE, right? Yep. .com. So thank you, Cirene, so much for being
my pleasure.
On our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And we are super excited to see what's going down. And we are so new to this here at Revive. Like everything that we talked about with Robert and Beth, David Leonard, Pastor Noemi, these are all new initiatives. These are all new projects. These are all new departments and ministries that we're launching here at Revive. Not for us, for all of us to just continue to be the church outside of the four walls. And so I know Cirene, it's in her heart that she will be doing some workshops. She'll be doing some trainings. So please stay connected to everything that we do here by subscribing, by following, by connecting to our website, because that's where you will find the information so you don't miss out on anything that Cirene is doing or anything else that's going on here at Revive Church. Again, we are excited for everything that is happening. Please subscribe if you've yet to subscribe. And if you just needed to listen to the episode before leaving us a rating and a review, go ahead and do so right now, because we've come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much. Now go live out your redemptive purpose in your circles of influence, knowing that God is with you. We'll see you next time.